till the day you die! Bomb you! Bomb you! Bomb you! Bomb you! Kill you! Kill you! Kill you! Call the feds on me, you fire!
Stalking a girl you never met for years over the internet, calling in bomb threats to government buildings, and being tracked by the feds. This isn't the plot of some psycho killer Hollywood movie. It's the dark and twisted reality behind the life of Daniel Larson.
We need stricter laws when it comes to drugs.
Before we can dive into the history of Daniel himself, I think it's necessary I give you a small peek behind the curtain that is Daniel's family and childhood. Daniel Larson was born November 15th, 1998 to Travis Larson and Elizabeth Scheimer in Lancaster, California. Reportedly, Daniel was abused severely as a kid, and his mother was the one mainly responsible, although the proof to back up these claims is doubtful at best.
I am going to jump off a bridge into a boiling water of piranhas.
Daniel also claimed that he was abused by his father as a kid, saying that the usual punishments consisted of being forced to smoke cigars or being beaten with a belt. But just like the claims of abuse regarding his mother, there is virtually no evidence to support these claims, other than his word, which means absolutely nothing because the dude is a kid-loving twat waffle.
Also, just to let everyone know, I don't even own Pinterest. I don't even have the app.
Despite the lack of credibility surrounding Daniel's word, his parents don't seem like they're completely normal either, and he was in social services for a while as a child, so he could be telling the truth about the abuse. His father Travis is a pretty mysterious guy, honestly. From what I can see, he left Daniel and his wife when Daniel was around 12 years old, which is also right around the time he was taken away by social services. Travis hasn't been a very popular figure in the Daniel Larson universe, but a channel known as Larson Leak was able to conduct an on-the-fly interview with him over the phone.
Who the hell is this? I'm not going to reveal any information at this point. Yes. In the thousands of followers. Nothing racial before this. He has several mental disabilities. I'm not going to give any further information. Correct. My advice is literally call the cops and report him. Less than 10. Because I'm in California. You got the wrong number. Bye.
As you just heard, Travis seems to be somewhat aware of his son's internet infamy and the many allegations surrounding his attractions to minors and use of the N-word. If hanging up mid-interview and abandoning his son at 12 years old wasn't a big enough clue, I think it's safe to say that Travis Larson and his son, Daniel Larson, are not on speaking terms. Unlike his father, Daniel's mother was much more spoken of inside his online community, and it wasn't in a good light. Elizabeth was adopted at a young age and went on to graduate from Antelope Valley College with a degree in music and performing arts. Even though she had a somewhat normal childhood, Elizabeth most likely has some type of disability, just going off the way she looks and how she acts. On top of the probable mental disability, Elizabeth has been suffering from lupus since she was just 20 years old, and this disease would eventually leave her in a wheelchair. Because of this, in 2009, Elizabeth moved herself and Daniel from California to Colorado for ease of access to good medical care. From there, it's believed she began to neglect Daniel, which led to Daniel being sent into foster care, and then being put into the Tennyson Center, which was basically just a group home for kids from similar backgrounds to Daniel.
Rod Witt, the president of Tennyson Center, says the program gives children like Danny great opportunity.
Do they bring some challenges? Absolutely they do. But, they've got the opportunity to, number one, be safe. Number two, receive some attention that they've, in some cases, never received. And number number three, to get help and to be themselves and to really let their own personality.
Everything you've just heard should have given you a good insight into the people raising Daniel Larson. His father, more likely than not, played a hand in Daniel's mental illnesses, and he abandoned his family when Daniel was still very young. Today, he's living with a new family and has no contact with his ex-wife or Daniel. His mother was a little bit more on the normal side compared to his father, but she also suffers from multiple diseases and wasn't a great mom. She most likely neglected Daniel as a child, and allegations of abuse have been thrown. To the best of my knowledge, she's been in an assisted living facility since 2015, is still wheelchair bound, and is no longer in contact with her son Daniel. Now that you know a little more about the home environment of Daniel Larson, let's take a closer look at his life and story. From a very early age, Daniel was violent, full of rage, and severely retarded. Apparently, he's actually been formally diagnosed with ADHD, autism, and bipolar disorder, which, as you'll come to see, makes complete sense. Daniel once told his TikTok following that he was a quote animal murderer because one time when he was much younger, he was playing with his neighbor's dog when the dog got itself impaled on a fence pole. Now you might be wondering why I would bring up this random fact, but it actually has to do with Daniel's life in foster care. Picking up where we left off when I was talking about his mother, Daniel was around 11 years old when he first entered foster care and is believed to have been in around 15 different foster homes before age 12. Because of the large number of families Daniel had stayed with, that meant the Developmental Disabilities Resource Center, or DDRC, had sent around a lot of briefings on Daniel to potential foster families. And of course, some crazy f***s online found these alleged briefings. As you can see, it says Daniel has lived in a few different host homes in the past few years and has a history of property damage, kicking animals, self-injurious behavior, and verbally threatening or hitting providers when he's upset. So according to this alleged leaked DDRC briefing, Daniel was violent towards animals from a very young age. I don't think it's a long shot to say watching a dog get impaled by a fence spike as a little kid could play a role in acting that way. That's literally how most serial killers get started. When Daniel wasn't in a foster home, he was staying at the Tennyson Center in Colorado, which, as I said earlier, was basically a group home with adult supervision for abused, exploited, and disabled kids. Overall, he wouldn't stay here for too long, but it did allow him to have a somewhat stable place to lay his head at night. Daniel says that his time at the Tennyson Center was actually really good for him, but the same can't be said for other kids. In 2021, the residential program that Daniel was part of got shut down due to instances of drug overdoses, kids running away, and sexual misconduct involving minors. Daniel would be in and out of foster care and the Tennyson Center until roughly 2011 to 2012, when his grandmother Nancy finally won custody over Daniel in court.
When his grandmother got word of Danny's situation, she moved here from California to be his guardian, so he wouldn't end up in a foster home. Danny still lived at the center for a year and a half, but now lives with his grandma, continuing to go to school at Tennyson and receive treatment.
When he came to Tennyson almost 3 years ago, he was very angry and confused and feeling very uncertain about his life and where he belonged and what was going to happen.
At first, this sounds great, but it's honestly not. Reportedly, Nancy was very bad when it came to enabling Daniel's poor behavior, but even if that is true, it's definitely better than what he had before. We were able to get a small glimpse of that in this old news clip involving Daniel and his grandmother, where they basically are just shooting a promo for the Tennyson Center. Even though Daniel had been rescued from the system, his grandmother still couldn't handle Daniel even if she wanted to. So upon his rescue, he was re-enrolled in an education and rehabilitation program at Tennyson. This is where he met a man named Bob Proctor. Daniel met Bob through a buddy reading program at the facility, and the two actually remained in contact and pretty close for years after the program ended. Bob would even go as far as later financially supporting Daniel, but eventually cut ties with Daniel after many freakouts and dealing with tons of trolling. Bob is also an elderly man who is believed to be dying of cancer, so it makes sense that he wouldn't want to put up with Daniel's in his final days. But long before the rift between Bob and Daniel grew, Daniel began to come out of his weird little shell. According to his LinkedIn page, Daniel was a volunteer dog walker for the Humane Society of Boulder Valley during the year 2012. Roughly 2 years later, in 2014, Daniel is confirmed to have participated in 8 different musical theater performances. Although he was never given any lead roles and was presumably an awful actor, it's believed that this era of Daniel's life is what sparked his obsession with becoming famous. Fast forward another 2 years to 2016, a new alternative school known as Sobieski Academy had its grand opening, and Daniel was enrolled. According to alleged ex-classmates of Daniel, his behavior at Sobieski was better than how he recently had been acting, but he would still have occasional outbursts and fits where he would hit himself. Aside from the occasional meltdown, Daniel was also the softball team's mascot. On top of the newfound passion for mascotting, his passion for singing grew, and his obsession with the underage singer Grace Vanderwall began.
Hi, young lady. What is your name?
Grace.
Grace, you're a beautiful young lady, you know that?
Thank you.
How old are you?
12.
Are you excited to be here?
It's crazy.
This can most likely be blamed on the fact that Daniel and his grandmother were watching America's Got Talent together one day, and she told Daniel, quote, "You might even sing with her on stage one day." Even though this was obviously a lie, Daniel began to really think it was true. It got to the point where Daniel adamantly believed he was in a relationship with Grace, despite the fact that he was nearly 18 at the time, and she was a mere 12 years old. This point is 100% where his years-long obsession with Grace began, and could be the first point in which we noticed Daniel's pedophilic tendencies. In the midst of all this romance, it appears that there was internal rage being harbored by Daniel towards his mother, and it was growing with every passing day. I say this because on November 6, 2017, at the age of 18, Daniel assaulted his wheelchair-bound mother. I feel like I've said that line so many times. What is it with these assaulting their moms? After he was arrested and brought in, he was charged with 1 count of assault in the 3rd degree, 1 count of property damage and criminal mischief, and 1 count of harassment. Despite the severity of these charges, 2 of the 3 were dropped by the DA, and the 3rd charge that he was found guilty on, which was harassment and only a misdemeanor, landed him in jail for less than 2 months, 45 days to be exact. Obviously, this incident completely shattered any remnants of a relationship that may have lingered between Daniel and his mother. So after this, the two have not been on speaking terms. Once the arrest blew over, Daniel graduated from Sobieski Academy at the age of 18. And if you didn't know this already, he didn't go any further with education than that. Instead, he chose the route of becoming a degenerate pedophile and internet terrorist. This point in the story is where we start to take a darker path, as if it wasn't bad enough already. What I want to look at now is Daniel's young adult life and his TikTok arc in its entirety. That's why I think it's only right to start at the beginning, because honestly, the beginning of his chronically online era was a very dark time in Daniel's life. On April 11th, 2019, Daniel had to put down his grandmother's beloved dog, Broadway. I'm not really sure how this would have affected Daniel, because as we know, his relationship with animals up until this point hasn't been the best, but I assume this was probably a dog he knew since he was very young, and it couldn't have been easy, even for someone as Daniel Larson. Just 2 months later, on July 24th of 2019, Daniel's grandmother Nancy passed away after her long battle with cancer. The dog was probably tough, but losing the one person who cared for you when you're as mentally as Daniel is has to be like the world is caving in around you, or so you'd think, but not for Daniel. On this fateful day, he was actually participating in a Special Olympics event when he was told the sad news. Instead of running to speak to the last family member he had in his life before they died, Daniel chose to stay at the event because he wanted to prove to the world that he was a fighter. This makes absolutely no sense though, because Daniel had no internet fame at this point, so the only people he could have been referring to were the people in the stands watching the event. Really bizarre. I'm not sure if that's really why he stayed at the event though. It could easily have been the fact that he was too scared to see his grandmother like that and framed himself as a fighter instead of the embarrassing truth, or he genuinely didn't give a talk about his grandmother and was only using her for housing. Who knows? Shortly after the death of his grandmother, Daniel was once again turned over to the state because despite his age, he couldn't take care of himself. This housing program not only gave Daniel a place to stay, but his first job, which was at a local thrift shop. Because of this job and ultimately the housing program, Daniel was able to save up enough money to buy a phone. And this is where his internet journey began. He was on and off social media sites like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok throughout the end of 2019 and early 2020.
We need laws that can get everybody heard, because I feel like it's wrong for people to go unheard, like me, for the past 5 years.
But at this point, he really didn't use TikTok other than the occasional random post. He was more a regular user of Twitter. Actually, his first account is still up today. The username is at DanielL26324766 if you feel like doom scrolling. But it's not that interesting, honestly. Just a lot of pictures and videos of Daniel's day-to-day life. And of course, the occasional PSA concerning his upcoming music. I think Daniel definitely got his fame gene from his mother. I mean, look at these tweets side by side. On the left is Daniel's mother tweeting to her non-existent fans about upcoming music. On the right, you have a video of Daniel saying basically the same thing to his Twitter followers.
Hi, my name is Daniel Larson, and I'm going to be writing a song in the next month, and I'll be posting it to this page. Thank you for all the support, and let's keep moving forward. Thank you. Have a nice day.
This Twitter-obsessed era lasted until March of 2020, when Daniel's TikTok account really started to gain traction. If you were on TikTok around this time, you probably had a Daniel Larson video come across your For You page.
Did you know that salt water tastes like sushi? Looks like tomorrow there's gonna be an asteroid hit the Earth. But don't worry, it's gonna be the center of the ocean. All we'll have to deal with is big waves. Don't worry, folks, we're currently looking into the asteroid situation. Please stay tuned. I am going to go get lunch today at 12 o'clock with R2-D2.
I know I did. And the reason behind his virality was actually really simple. He's basically just a circus clown. People got drawn into Daniel's account for his out-of-this-world appearance, and they stayed for the public housing tours, mental breakdowns, public freakouts, and bomb threats. A few months later in July of 2020, Daniel would announce his intent to run for president in 2024. Be warned, this clip has insane TikTok ear rape audio, so maybe turn the volume down a bit.
Hello everyone! Just a reminder, I am going to be running for president in 2024. Are you ready for this? Please follow me, we got some big news coming ahead.
This era didn't last long, but it's going to be somewhat important in a moment when we talk about Daniel's pedophile allegations, because Daniel has said if he were president, he'd legalize pedophilia. But before we get to that, there's a few more things I want to touch on. This part of Daniel's life is eerily similar to Cyrax's life. They both have big dreams of becoming famous singers, and both of them have trolls who create fake record labels to fuck with them. For Daniel though, these labels are usually much more exploitive, but not all the time. The first record label to contact Daniel was actually a legit band that had started their own label. The band was known as Rectus Abdominis, and the label they had was called Graduate Records. Despite their attempts to give Daniel a recording deal, he decided they weren't big enough for him and denied their offer. There was no trolling here from them. He turned down the only legit offer he would ever receive, and like most people, the band would later cut ties with Daniel due to his pedophile allegations. The next label to come into contact with Daniel was called Roach Records, and they actually put out a song with Daniel on YouTube called Fake News. Here's a little taste of that.
What's up? This is Big D. Y'all ready to party? All these fake record labels trying to reach out to me. One thing they don't know is they call me Big D. I'll be hanging out here with Roach Records. We've been making them G's. Fine dining records, yeah, nobody needs.
It's actually still up on YouTube right now, so if you do want to hear the full thing, I'll have it linked in my description. But like usual, this relationship didn't last long. Roach Records would cut ties with Daniel around December of 2020, once again for the pedophile allegations. There are plenty more fake record labels and managers that have interacted with Daniel, but they don't really come into the picture until 2021. So let's focus on the end of 2020. I've said that both record labels that talked to Daniel cut ties with him due to pedophilic allegations. What I'm referring to is the leaking leaking of Daniel's Pinterest account that included pictures of young children, mainly girls, as well as information surrounding the laws of consent in the United States. Immediately, Daniel denied these allegations, but internet sleuths later found that the email associated with the Pinterest account was also linked to one of his Twitter accounts. So obviously, Daniel had an interest with young girls and the specifics of the laws of consent.
I created the Pinterest as a way to go viral.
The Pinterest is a way. Wait, sorry. Could you explain? Just sorry. Could you just repeat that?
Yeah. So I made the Pinterest as a way to go viral at that time.
Of course, it's a smart way, right?
Yeah, and then I told the fans that, like,
you know, it was Flexburger, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And not Flexburger, but you know what I mean. I threw it off.
It was a bunch of them. It was a lot of them.
But then when it went viral, it did actually get hacked. So that is the truth.
Yeah, it got worse.
And then it got worse.
Yeah. What about
What's up? This is Big D. Y'all ready to party? All these fake record labels trying to reach out to me. One thing they don't know is they call me Big D. I'll be hanging out here with Roach Records. We be making them G's. Fine dining records.
I actually spoke all about this already in one of my recent videos, titled When LolCows Get Arrested. I'll have that link below if you want to take a look. Regardless, the Pinterest account leaking was a huge deal in the Daniel Larson community. He ended up disappearing from social media on December 17th, 2020, and was promptly investigated by the feds due to the stuff he had on his Pinterest. When Daniel made his final post, he told his fans that he would be trying out for America's Got Talent and to stay in tune with his page for updates. But as I just said, that was a complete lie. It was later revealed that the podcast Daniel appeared on in December after the Pinterest leaking actually reported Daniel to the FBI because they believed him to be in possession of child sexual exploitation material, or CSEM. Daniel would return to the internet nearly 3 months later in March of 2021 and informed TikTok that the FBI had been investigating him, which would also confirm the America's Got Talent thing was a lie. Around this time, Daniel also got himself a new manager, someone going by the name Flexburger. Flex was also the one operating 2 fake record labels, Interscope Records and Party House Records. I'm sure you're wondering why someone would want to manage or even be in association with a known pedophile. For Flexburger, it was revenge. He wanted to expose Daniel once more for his depraved actions, so he did just that. The first Flexburger incident I want to talk about occurred just a few months after Daniel's return to the internet, on May 6, 2021. In the days leading up to this horrifying live stream, Daniel told his followers he would soon be acting in adult films. We have Flexburger to thank for that, because the way he was able to trick Daniel into doing what he did involved convincing him to go on TikTok Live and audition for the film. So, as desperate for fame as he is, Daniel agreed with the idea, and this clip is the result. Obviously, I had to blur that, but I think you should have got a good idea of what was taking place there. I think it goes without saying, but Daniel was immediately banned for this, and he actually went on a different account and did the same thing later that day, and was once again immediately banned. If these people weren't pedophiles and overall pieces of shit, I would think things like that are more messed up, but it's hard to feel bad for a kid diddler and dog kicker. The next Flexburger leak I want to look at is referred to as the toothbrush incident. I just want to preface this by saying I cannot show any part of this clip on YouTube, and honestly, you don't want to see it. I opened it to see if there was any way to blur some of it and play a piece for you. Instead, I threw open my mouth after about 20 seconds. Basically, what happens is Flexburger convinced Daniel that if he went on video, shoved a toothbrush into his and then brushed his teeth with that same toothbrush, it would help his relationship with Grace Vanderwall. So of course, he did it. A few months after the toothbrush incident took place, around November of 2021 I think, Daniel was removed from the housing he had been given and put into a new place with a man named Jonas. The lore involving this house is honestly pretty entertaining. It's referred to as the Hype House in the Daniel Larson community because there were a few other interesting side characters that lived there. But by December, Daniel had run away from Jonas's house, and the first homeless arc of the Daniel Larson saga began. Daniel was homeless for basically every day after he left Jonas's house back in December of 2021. Of course, there were off days where he either paid for a hotel or even times where he'd be put into subsidized housing, but for the majority of his days since December, he's been living on the streets and homeless. Because of his new situation, it led to Daniel having more frequent run-ins with police. Within just months of becoming homeless, Daniel's health was deteriorating even more than it already was. His feet were in shambles, his nails nails looked like overgrown fungus claws, and presumably he smelled worse than Nick White. Because he had no money and no place to stay, Daniel resorted to loitering so he could charge his phone and make TikToks. The most notable incident of this happened on May 13th, 2022, when Daniel can be seen on video in an altercation with a homeowner. The reason for the altercation was apparently that Daniel was sitting on this man's porch, just using an outlet like he owned the place. Obviously, the guy came out and saw a dirty homeless guy sitting there and wanted him gone. But what Daniel did next, I don't think anyone saw coming. In what honestly is one of the most bizarre claims I've ever heard, Daniel called the dude the N-word and claimed it was okay because he feared for his safety. For most, this would be enough drama for one day, but not for Daniel.
Yes, I have a trespasser sitting on my patio in the front of my house. My address is... Are you gonna wait? Is that what you're waiting for?
I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know if you're gonna...
I'm asking you a f***ing question! You better get the f*** off of here! Get the f*** out of here before I move you out of here!
If you take one step
closer... Get the f*** off my property!
Later that same day, Daniel was arrested for petty theft, which most likely occurred as a result of a classic Daniel Larson dine and dash. Although this was a pretty bad day for Danny Boy, it got better later that month. Towards the end of May, a TikTok user by the name of Brink got in contact with Daniel. These guys were better than most of the inside circle around Daniel. They took him out to get a haircut, they got him food, and even got him to finally start bathing when he had the chance. But like everyone else, Brink would eventually cut Daniel off after seeing his true colors. Shortly after the May 13th arrest, Daniel was able to secure a new house in public housing with a woman named Miss P. He was officially placed into this house on August 31st of 2022, and within days he added new decorations to the place, in the form of fist-shaped holes in the walls. Naturally, Daniel was kicked out within 2 months, with the eviction taking place on October 16th, 2022, and it was actually all caught on camera. As you just saw, Daniel was hitting the house and himself repeatedly. These actions also landed him a new court case for destruction of property.
I already have all of my notifications turned off. I have my phone location tracking. I have that off.
You guys are not doing anything right! You guys are supposed to call my entertainment manager for security reasons! And you guys want to blame me for everything! It's not my fault!
We just blame you for the holes you put in the wall.
No, it's... The reason why that's happening is because you guys are like blaming me for all my fucking career!
Oh, do you see your head?
You guys want to blame me for just the fact that I am popular! You guys don't listen to me!
So once again, Daniel is homeless. Just 3 days after being evicted, Daniel was out at Dave & Buster's and met some potential friends. The following day on the 20th, Daniel and his newfound friends went up to Colorado Springs, but these friends soon realized what an absolute nightmare he is to be around. So they ditched him at a nearby Walgreens and forced Daniel to begin his 1-hour walk home. As the year progresses, the colder it gets in Colorado, which led to Daniel having to cuddle up with other homeless people. Purely judging these people by how they look, Daniel spent the night of October 25th surrounded and snuggled up by homeless drug addicts in an elevator. How fun is that? Even though his situation is absolutely awful, Daniel was still treating anyone who tried to help him like absolute. The perfect depiction of this took place on December 10th, 2022, and all went down on another TikTok live. The background story for this clip is as follows. Daniel had been put up in a motel for the past few days, and was actually kicked out of the motel because he had been destroying property inside his room. Somehow, some way, the motel information was leaked to his community, and obviously the trolls began to barrage the motel with calls. One of these callers was able to get in contact with Daniel's room directly, and told Daniel he worked with the motel and they were going to kill him. Because of this, Daniel called his old friend Bob Proctor and began to absolutely lose his mind in Bob's car.
Get out of the car, Daniel!
car! God damn! Get out of my car! No! You don't understand! You don't... Stop!
Get
It's
out of
not
my
my
car.
fault! It's not my fault! It's
Get
not
out of
my
my
fault!
car.
The motel! The motel!
As you just saw, Daniel began to even hit Bob, who, might I remind you, is around 70 years old and dying of cancer. This clip alone really made a lot of the public who hadn't already started to hate Daniel flip on him and begin to hate. After this fight with Bob took place, he bought Daniel a plane ticket to California, presumably in an effort to get him into a new mental health facility. Daniel would end up staying in California until February of 2023, which is when he started his road trip across the US. But honestly, this was a pretty uneventful time in the Larson community. So let's skip a few months ahead to July of 2023. On July 9th, Daniel was somehow able to convince employees at the Longmont Humane Society to let him adopt a German Shepherd named Zola. For some odd reason, they didn't conduct a background check at all, so Daniel simply lied on his application. He told them he wasn't homeless, but living in an RV. Obviously, you and I both know Daniel Larson should not have been able to adopt that dog, and some of Daniel's ex-managers knew it too. So some trolls and ex-managers grouped together and set out to rescue Zola from Daniel, under the guise of their new Discord server, SEAL Team 6. There were several different rescue attempts made before the SEALs ever got involved, but none of them were successful. Thankfully, on July 10th, SEAL Team 6 was able to track down Daniel and take Zola away from him. Upon getting Zola away from Daniel, they noticed she had developed Giardia, which is a parasite if you don't know. Shortly after their successful mission, Zola was returned back to the Longmont Humane Society, and Daniel was blacklisted from the premises. If you couldn't already guess, Daniel didn't respond well to having his dog rescued from him at all. The following day on July 11th, Daniel went into his local Walmart and had one of his biggest public freakouts to date. He started by destroying shelves of products and eventually attempted to hijack a bus filled with elderly citizens. He even tried to smash the bus window using the leash left behind from Zola. Thankfully, the body cam footage from this incident actually went public.
I got my dog now. And then I got attacked in the parking lot.
Alright, just relax. Just relax. We're gonna get figured out what's going on and then we can go from there.
Is this one?
As you'll see in a moment, Daniel is already being held on the ground by a Walmart employee and crying about his dog. Ultimately, Daniel didn't face any real punishment for this incident. The next important era of Daniel's life we should look at is known as his college arc. This was one of Daniel's shortest arcs, but it's also one of the most delusional. On September 10th, 2023, Daniel informed his fans that he would be enrolling at CU Boulder. He even made claims about having a scholarship. Within just 2 days of beginning his college arc, Daniel has started hanging around with some frat kids from CU. The one in this picture is Nathan and went by at 22dope on TikTok. Roughly 4 days later, on September 16th, Daniel was convinced by trolls that Coach Deion Sanders wanted to meet with him. So naturally, Daniel knew this was a real offer, because after all, he's a famous singer. Once he found out about the opportunity, Daniel made his way towards the football field, where he encountered a security guard. He told the man why he was there, and obviously the security guard said, "No, you're not getting in." In response to that, Daniel decided the best course of action was to hit the security guard, which ended with Daniel being thrown to the ground and pinned until police showed up. Because of this outburst, Daniel was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. He actually ended up being held somewhat accountable too. He pled guilty and was given 12 months of probation, 48 hours of community service, and ordered to attend anger management classes. He was also banned from Folsom Field. Throughout 2021 to 2023, Daniel had over 10 arrests occur, all on minor charges, so I didn't want to waste time looking at the small stuff. But if you are interested in that, I strongly suggest checking out my video, When LolCows Get Arrested. I went over every single arrest Daniel's dealt with. What I want to focus on now is the first arrest of 2024, and one of Daniel's first real stints in jail. On January 23rd of this year, Daniel Larson had an arrest warrant issued on fugitive of justice charges for missing one of his previously assigned court dates. He was then arrested on February 3rd and sent to the Arapahoe County Jail with his bond set at $20,000. Unable to pay his bail, Daniel would be sitting in jail for the next month in total. Roughly 10 days after being sent to Arapahoe, Daniel was transferred to Boulder County Jail, which is where he served the remaining 17 days of his sentence. The jail arc would finally come to an end on March 1st, when Daniel was released from jail and back out on the mean streets of Colorado. This wasn't the end of Daniel's jail experience by any means though. He would have several run-ins with police and courtrooms over the next month on more fugitive of justice charges from missed court dates. But his life changed forever on April 30th of 2024. On this fateful day in Larsonite history, Daniel was arrested because of the terrorist-style remarks he had made over the last year. You see, around the same time that Zola was rescued from Daniel and he had his Walmart freakout, a real Secret Service agent from their field office in Denver named Daniel McDougal started looking into Daniel Larson because of all the wild shit he was saying online. Agent McDougal even warned Daniel multiple times to stop doing what he was doing because they were going to have to pursue him. But of course, Danny kept doing what he does best, making an absolute clown out of himself. Ultimately, this ignorance would cost him and led to Daniel being arrested at a probation meeting on April 30th. Following the arrest, he was sent to the Jefferson County Detention Facility and denied any bail because finally one of these judges deemed him a flight risk. A few days after the arrest on May 2nd, a phone call between Daniel and one of his ex-managers was uploaded online. In the call, you'll hear Daniel say the feds got him on bomb threats and were even looking into his old friend Bob's financial situation because they suspected him of committing fraud. That clip was one of the last phone calls that we got from Daniel in prison, and I seriously doubt we'll be getting many more, if any at all.
The feds got you?
Yeah, this time the feds got me. And Bob told me that it wasn't going to happen and he didn't believe me. And I went to probation yesterday and sure enough, the feds were there and they charged me with 7 counts of threats from the threats that I made.
7 counts of threats?
And Associates.
Yep, under federal court.
Holy
As I said in my other video about Daniel's prison time, he's looking at some serious charges and a lot of years behind bars. When the first arrest happened, Daniel was looking at 6 counts of use or threatened use of explosive and 1 count of interstate communication of threats. Every single threatened use of explosive charge brings with it a mandatory 10 years in prison, and the single count of interstate communication of threats carried between 2 to 5 years. So basically, Daniel was facing around 65 years in prison at first, but around July 17th, a Reddit user revealed that 4 of his 6 threatened use charges had been dropped, which reduced his maximum prison time from 65 years to 25 years. Less than a month into Daniel's new legal battle, the judge presiding over his case had ruled in favor of a mandatory psych evaluation. Because the people involved can obviously see Daniel as mentally disabled, they all agreed and Daniel was transferred to Englewood Federal Correction Facility to await his mental evaluation. Nearly a month later, on July 19th, 2024, a psychiatric report was submitted for Daniel and he was deemed incompetent to stand trial. Instead, he'll be sent to an unnamed loony bin with the hope of better evaluating him. Reportedly, his next hearing is set for September of this year, so until then, he will remain chained up in a rubber room where he belongs. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see my sources for this video, check out my Twitter, which is at redmanspeaksyt. I'll have all the links posted there. I love you, have a good one, peace.